Welcome to the Politics Inc. podcast, where we explore the world of politics through the lens and perspective of editorial cartoonists. I'm your host, Jim Morrissey. My guest today has created more than 10,000 editorial cartoons in her 35-year career. From stops at the San Jose Mercury News, Philadelphia Daily News, and the Philadelphia Inquirer. In 1992, she became the first woman to win the Pulitzer Prize for editorial cartooning. She's the recipient of 3 Overseas Press Club Awards and 2 Robert F. Kennedy Journalism Awards for cartooning. And she's illustrated and instigated the amazing book Free Speech and Why You Should Give a Damn. Please enjoy my conversation with the one and only Signe Wilkerson.
I've been a huge fan for a long time, and just reading more about you, understanding your career, I just thought, man, I would love to sit and talk with you, especially here in the year 2024, when so much is going on politically. That was kind of the impetus of me starting this podcast, was to meet and talk with great cartoonists such as yourself to help put this year and cartooning in perspective for people who may not know or have an understanding of why editorial cartoons are so important. So take me through how you got to being an editorial cartoonist.
Well, it's way back in the last century. I'm that old. And actually, when I was a kid, I'd gone to Girl Scout camp and had a friend. I met a friend there who lived, far enough away that I couldn't see her regularly. So we would make up newspapers and send them to each other.
Oh, nice.
So I'd do drawings in my newspaper, and I have none of them to show you, but and barely remember them. But when I got out of college with the all-important BA in English and a fairly mediocre grade average, I didn't exactly have a career path laid in front of me. So, but I started work in outside Philadelphia in Chester County, and picked up a bunch of part-time jobs. And one of them was at the mighty Westchester Daily Local News, the county seat of Chester County. And there I started as a part-time reporter and would do school board meetings, township supervisor meetings, and covering the really big issues like Pocopson Township lowering the blade on their road grass mower from 19 to 17 inches.
Big news, big
My
news.
story. But the good thing about it was that my editors there, one was a Swarthmore grad and one was a Haverford College grad. And they were just a few years older than I was. And we just had a jolly good time at this newspaper. And one of my editors was Dave Barry, who they know as the humor writer, who was not then a humor writer, was an editor. And I started doing little drawings for the paper, and they just kept getting bigger. And then actually started doing some local political cartoons for them. Incredibly badly drawn, but they, it was a Westchester Daily Local News. They weren't going to be hiring Pat Oliphant. At any rate, that's how it started. And then I moved into Philadelphia, went to art school, and a friend of mine was painting a tuba with me one morning at art school. Turned out to be a reporter for the Daily News and very active in journalism in Philadelphia. And through her, I met Tony Auth, the great cartoonist for the Philadelphia Inquirer, and went to see him, and that he opened up doors for me. I got into the paper for starters, and the Daily News was right upstairs from the Inquirer. Kitty worked for the Daily News. I started doing drawings for them that got bigger and bigger.
Oh, man.
So that's how it got started.
And did you ever sit with Tony and look at his process or kind of deconstruct, or did he share, you always use this kind of ink or use the blue pencil first so it doesn't pick up Xerox lines? Or did he share any of those kind of tidbits of like a practical side, or even I guess the more, you probably already had a lot of that too, the more emotional side of like, oh, I got this deep sense of justice for this issue. I want to do something.
Well, yeah, I don't think you become a cartoonist without the latter. Yes, definitely meeting Tony was helpful for the former, but actually really blew it in not picking his brain more. I mean, I was kind of in awe of him and didn't want to bother him, but he was very, very generous, and he helped many, many young cartoonists coming up in the world. So, I was just one of many he mentored.
Oh, that's great. So so Tony inspired you. Was there anyone else, whether in Philadelphia or at different publications you've worked at, or even before you said, oh, this is a viable career, was there anyone else who inspired you to pick up the pen?
Well, as I said, I was going to art school. So one of the things that I took was printmaking.
Oh, printmaking, yeah.
And I mean, on big litho stones. This was the Academy of Fine Arts, which is a traditional art school. It's not a cartooning school. They didn't do cartooning. But I was able to do cartoons. As a matter of fact, can you pause a second and I can
Yeah.
I just happen to have this old print out. Just a second.
You got it. Yeah.
This is wrapped in plastic. So let me know if there's a reflection.
Yeah.
But this is an etching I did this is way back, and it's called The Execution. Cheerful little, and so it's just three figures looking to the right who, with the reflection of like a flash of light coming towards them. So it wasn't overtly political on a particular topic, but on an issue. See from this how bad my drawing was.
No, that was really good. That was really good.
Well, maybe it had promise.
Yeah, no, but I think that's what's great about your style is there's like a elegance in the simplicity. Like you don't try to overwork a character, you don't try to overwork a scene. It has all the essential elements to tell the story. And what I love about that etching you just showed is it's what's not seen that really makes that so powerful, and calling it The Execution and not showing the execution, just showing the reaction of three people. Mm-hmm. I think that's the power in it. So I could see how you were maybe crafting or getting some of your chops back then, even with that piece.
Yeah. Well, it was also capital punishment was an issue at the time, whether to ban it or not. So, it was a semi-topical, but not pegged to one particular thing going on.
Got it. Well, could you take me through a little bit of your process? And obviously working in a newsroom, having the exposure, working at different papers, how has your process kind of stayed the same, and how has it changed over your career?
My process has changed with the technology. I mean, back then you could not do shading without doing lines, and people used that Zipatone to paste on to be the shadow part of things. Or Tony used this particular kind of paper that had a blue line embedded in it. And if you put a solution on top, that line would become black. And so it would be like very fine line that would make a shadow for you. So, I mean, that's the kind of thing that has changed so remarkably over the years. And I have to say, some of the greater Bill Malden and others got along fine without Zipatone.
Yeah.
They just had a greasy pencil or pen and did their lines like that. For a daily newspaper, the technology was not there to do shading in the way you can do anything now.
Yeah. What kind of pen did you use?
These idea.
So you would change pens, right? I mean, would you do like a
Yeah.
typical, and I just happen to have one here, bulk oil dip pen, or would you use more like a kind of like a Sharpie or ballpoint pen?
I never used a Sharpie, never a ballpoint ever in all the career. But I did use, what did I use? Gosh, I can't even remember what I used. But I know the rapidograph pen.
Oh, rapidographs. Oh, wow. Okay.
Because they had, I wasn't I wasn't talented enough to really use that kind of flexible tip, although I have used it in the past. But for my style, a solid, it's not a solid line. You can get them in various widths so that you can vary the width in other different parts of the drawing. But I used that because it fit my style.
Got it. And with that, then, when a topic came up or when something came up, what was that process like? You have a deadline. Many people don't know, editorial cartoonists for a newspaper, especially. You're always working against a deadline, especially for dailies.
If you didn't get your deadline, it didn't get in the paper.
Yes. What was that process like of like coming up with the idea, generating the idea, then executing it all within like less than a day sometimes to come up with it?
Well, my first job was in San Jose, California. So that the good thing there was that with the time lag, there were already things that had happened that morning. So you could be really, really topical. It wasn't yesterday's news. It was today's news. And that I used almost entirely just pen and ink. I didn't do anything super fancy. And honestly, I got hired very early, way too early for a full-time job. That was my first full-time job. I had done some for the Daily News, but when their regular cartoonist was out. My publisher came in one day and said, your cartoons. I was talking to my friend on the golf course. This is literally what happened. And he just said, your cartoons frost him. And I took that to mean that I was not on solid ground, and I wasn't. And they were kind of right. I mean, I wasn't up to par. I mean, there were just great cartoonists in California at the time. Paul Conrad at the LA Times was one of the great cartoonists of American cartooning. So I was on this thin ice. But then one day, publisher came in and he said, I was wondering, could I get a copy of this cartoon you did? I went, sure. Can we get it to you? Honestly, it was like I thought he was coming in to fire me.
Yeah.
Well, I said, who's it for? And he said, well, my neighbor at my house in Hawaii liked it.
Oh boy.
And for some reason, it had been reprinted in the Washington Post, and she had seen it there. I said, oh, who's your friend? Claire Booth Luce. Claire Booth Luce, conservative Republican, saved my little liberal ass. I mean, it was such an astonishing turn of events. And my editor couldn't fire me.
Yeah, that you're won his graces over. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Any rate, a newsroom is crazy and crazy things happen, but that was one of the craziest for me.
No, I love that. I was gonna then shift over then during your time, and so many different political leaders have come and gone, both only in California and in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, but also at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Is there a particular politician you'd love to draw? Because I think sometimes everyone has like a style or a shorthand when they see a cartoonist or when they see a politician, and a lot of cartoonists do the same things. Do you have a particular politician that you'd loved to draw?
Well, I like Trump.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a fountain of both visual imagery with his astonishingly colored hair, his golf clubs, and then what comes out of his mouth. So he's great. Biden is so pale in
Yeah.
comparison. You know, he's got white hair plugs all over his head, but that's hard to show. He's got a very sort of nondescript face compared to Trump or many other politicians too, Republican and Democrat. So Trump has been a gift to cartoonists in many, many ways, and we're grateful for him. It's always a conundrum who to vote for.
Yeah. Do I want to have like cartoons write themselves for the next 4 years or no, that's great. Well, I kind of wanted to shift gears because you were part of a book, and like when I said at the beginning, you were an instigator, but you came up with this idea for a book of why free speech matters and why free speech matters and why you should give a damn. And I listened to an interview that you were talking about that because censorship has always been alive and well in different societies and in our society. And that's what was a little bit of the impetus for you to write the book. But you had a great line in there of controversial things aren't where things end, is where they begin. And I just would love for you to unpack that a little bit because I thought it was so profound that when there used to be issues, there used to be problems where your cartoons would ruffle some feathers, people would picket or protest. But now, as you said, people don't know where the newspaper is usually at, so they can't picket and protest. But you said it opened up some dialogue. I'd just love for you to open up a little bit more about that quote and why it matters to have free speech.
Well, at the Daily News, it wasn't just me who had free speech. Our readers had a lot of free speech. We had a big letters page, and we often had guest people from the community writing about things. And, you know, the other thing, though, was until the last decade, maybe, newspapers mattered. That's where people got their news, but they don't anymore. Not news on paper. That's done. And therefore, the cartoon as an item that many, many, many people of all different persuasions would see every morning in their newspaper, it's now niche. You go to the site that you agree with, and then you see everything on that site that validates your point of view. Cartoons just don't work the same way online as they do. So, you know, my experience is much different than what's going on now. And I applaud any young political artists who find ways in this new medium to reach wider and not just niche audiences. But as far as getting, you know, about things that happened, I mean, I have at the Daily News, I was picketed several times by angry readers who, and one in particular was a group that was accusing me of being racist because I had a Black person as the instigator in a cartoon, but it was an issue about that this person had been involved with.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to draw him as a white person. So at any rate, I got the picketers, and we just invited some of them in to sit down and talk and let them let us what they think, and also give them plenty of space to respond in the paper. Interestingly, about 6 months later, I ended up on a panel sitting next to one of the protesters, and we were together because we both shared the same point of view on this panel. So I mean, and I can't tell you how good controversy can be. I mean, people pay attention to it. It sharpens their viewpoint on their own viewpoint and see another side maybe, and or just it inspires them to fight for their point of view as these protesters did.
Yeah.
But I've had some painful ones too. I did a cartoon. I did a tiny I should have brought it out, but a tiny little illustration for our letters page that was about our senator at the time. This was the early 90s. Arlen Specter was running for re-election, and a woman named Lynn Yackel ran against him on the Democratic side, and she was doing really, really well. And it was a Year of the Woman type thing, and so she was picking up steam. And he charged her with being an anti-Semite because her 1,000-member strong Presbyterian church in the suburbs had once had a Palestinian speaker in a series about the Middle East. And so we got all these letters to the editor. We used to, newspapers used that.
Yeah.
It was a message board. So I just did this tiny, it was this big little line drawing of a guy with a Lynn Yackel as a little dog on a stand in a circus, and a man in a suit and tie was holding the Star of David for her to jump through. Well, I got another full page of hate mail. The Senator Arlen Specter came in to visit, or no, his son came in to visit me, not me, but my editor, and tell him how bad I am. And so that was, a tough go for a while. Actually illustrated the page of all the letters that were against me. What at the very moment I just forgot I'd done was just 3 months earlier, I'd done a tiny little drawing about the Middle East again, complaining about the violence against Jews, Arabs shooting Jews. And I had just a little drawing of a guy in the headdress with a rifle, and the sight on the scope was the Star of David.
Yeah.
And it was the opposite, it was taking the Israeli point of view. I used the Star of David, but I didn't get one protest letter because it was Israeli.
Yeah.
And so that's how, imagery is powerful. I've learned that many, many times.
No, completely. And I think that's just it. You mentioned like how important it is, and looking at your book, having free speech. I think it's more important than ever, especially in a very politically divided country right now. But you said it exactly. You said it perfectly. Controversy is not a bad thing. We shouldn't be afraid of it because it does bring out conversation. It does bring out understanding in each other's points of views without leading to violence.
But I just have to say, I was very fortunate. Both my immediate editor and the editor of the overall news paper, Zach Stahlberg, tolerated me for all this. And my immediate editor, Rich Argood, was just a joy to work with. So I was very, very, very fortunate. They were two talented people with a expansive view of could be in the newspaper.
Yeah, no, that's so important too, is being, I don't want to say protected, but having that autonomy, having people have your back, I think through that process is really important, because I don't know if people understand when you do put something out there, you never know how it's going to be received. What's great is back in the day with newspapers, there was that direct line of communication of, well, people are mad, or if you don't hear anything, that means, well, I guess people liked it.
It wasn't very good, and
they never said anything about it. But I think that echo chamber that has been created through online media is exactly it, where people aren't being exposed to those things that are causing controversy. They're not seeing those cartoons. They're seeing the same things that feed their own point of view and their own political ideologies. There is something kind of a loss with the newspapers being the one thing that people would turn to see all the different points of view in one single source, as opposed to their own echo chambers, their own Fox, CNN, MSNBC types of worlds. So what I would say with all that, what would you say to someone, a young person getting into editorial cartoons? Because there does seem,
seriously, I don't know where I'm not in the same in their shoes, but it would have to be online for starters. Forget about paper unless you're selling prints. I mean, that's how it used to be back in the way back time.
Yeah.
Benjamin Franklin's Join or Die, our first really famous cartoon, created just a few blocks from where I'm sitting right now. It was on a press. If you come to Philadelphia, go to his house and you can see the printing press, but it's a huge press. And you don't just, it's not like this that these come out. And we just had a wonderful exhibit at the Historical Society of Pennsylvania of early cartoons. And they're
great.
Vastly different from ours. I mean, they're beautifully drawn. They're engravings, really.
Mm-hmm.
There are many, many characters. There are many, many thought balloons. And it's about stuff, it takes a card next to it to describe what it's actually about. So they're much more complicated than our simple particularly my simple cartoons. But if anyone's in Philadelphia, you can go find them. They have a wonderful, wonderful collection.
No, that's great. No, and I think that's just it. It's evolved so much over time that you're right. Where it was 200 plus years ago, where it was 100 years ago, has always been a simple way to communicate to the common person who maybe did or didn't even know how to read what was going on, and kind of speaking truth to power.
I mean, and I don't mean stylistically, although it is stylistic as well, but it's not a profession that you want to earn your money in. I think the Washington Post is the most supportive paper in the country for cartooning now. I may be wrong, and people listening to this will correct me, but they have a number of cartoonists they use. And so, I mean, like Ann Telnis, they use her, fortunately, a lot. She's excellent. But, they also use others who have different points of view. So
they've been a little bit like the New Yorker for political cartoonists over the years. Yeah,
the New Yorker doesn't trend towards politics in their
No,
it trends away from
exactly. Well, the final two questions. What's one question you wish I'd asked you?
How long do I have to gin up an answer? You've been pretty thorough, I would say. I just.
Is there anything you want to talk about as well?
Again, you've been way too thorough.
Okay.
You've picked my brain. I guess I would just say that drawing is the best way of getting into this. And I think when people will do it, they'll find ways to use them. I don't know if I can even get the monitor over to show it, but way in the background there's 25 or 30 little drawing books like this, where I just draw all the time. And it's hard to get major politicians to pose for you. But here's one early one 4 years ago of Kamala Harris when they were running that I just did. Let's see. This is a Republican guy.
Mike Pence.
Yeah, that's Mike Pence. Yeah. And thank you. I'm glad you. But it's also my grandchild. Here's Biden.
Yeah.
So that's how you get a caricature going, is just looking at him and drawing it. There's a grandchild. Biden, grandchild, Biden, grandchild. So, at any rate, that's
just keep drawing. I love it. Yeah.
Here is one. Follow the guidelines. It's only one glass of wine a night. The glass is like a gallon. And here, I don't know what I did with these. Oh, this is a good one. They have two cavemen, and he's saying, ordered it on Amazon. I don't know. That's just.
Well,
it's all in the same But you just keep drawing, draw what you see. Here was a Mike Pence rally. It's saying Trump, no bullshit on her cap. And that's how, I mean, you go to things and you see them with your fresh eye. You see them not through somebody else's eyes, going to an event and seeing it. Then you can pick up on a lot of really great details that you can use later.
No, I love it. No, that's awesome. It's always, I love seeing behind the scenes of people's sketchbooks and their thinking and drawings. This is such a great way. If you're new to this, you're trying to get into this. Sorry, my dog was going crazy. She had to jump on my lap.
It looks just like our dog. I don't know. I could bring up my dog, and my dog's cuter than your dog.
Kind of where it all starts for most people is just sitting down drawing or having that conviction to take on an issue like you've done throughout your career. And I think that's the kind of putting the bow on your work and your career in political cartoons. To me, that's been the common thread is you're always looking for ways. You have a great sense of justice, and you've always looked for ways to bring injustice into the spotlight with your work. Applaud you for all you've done over the years, and thank you for that fire you have for bringing justice to the world through your work.
And free speech.
And free speech, yes, yes.
Honestly, we couldn't be cartoonists the way we've been cartoonists without it.
Yes, completely agree. Yeah, we overlook it or maybe underappreciate what that actually means for us. So no, I appreciate it. Well, thank you so much, Signe, for taking time out of your busy day and taking time to jump on this call. I really appreciate it.
As I said, I'm kind of out of the stream right now, so this has been a really great pleasure, and you've asked wonderful questions. So thank you very much.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much for taking the time. Again, I'm a huge fan. I think the world is a better place because of the work you've done over your career.
Absolutely. I pretty much solved most of the world's problems.
World's problems were done.